The discussion was about, we all agree that what needs to be brought to bear is the transforming power of the gospel of Jesus Christ. This is the only power that's been given to us. It is the only power that there's no power on earth that can possibly resist this. And my concern was someone listening to that might not recognize that there were two understandings of the gospel.
But they only heard one, Doc.
He doesn't. Yeah, you'll notice that. The reason that he said that doesn't work, or I've not seen that, that pragmatic thing, is the man-centered gospel that he has doesn't change hearts and minds. He's right. Exactly right.
They only heard one gospel, and that whatever that however they might think of it, I believe the supernatural power of hearing that alone is enough to transform their heart.
Yes, but let's just. But did Matt hear that? That would be another question. You wanted. I know you want to have more time with him. I get that. I understand that.
But Doc, you know this too. Sometimes when you're talking to the person, you're really talking to the audience. So Matt was just there a lot of times to be there in one sense that we're having a conversation. But there's a point, and you know this from open air preaching, where it might be the guy three rows down from where you're. You know what I mean? And so sometimes you have the conversation with the person that's there, right. But man, you're trying to hit the whole audience, and you say, which dog is going to yell the loudest? And so that's what you're doing in the situation sometimes. And so, and you know this from hosting the show. It's not always about what's in front of you; it's what's behind and where you're trying to, who else you're trying to hit in that conversation.
Oh yeah, I hear it, and that's why when I got done with it, I was like, let's talk about that. But somehow that wasn't one of the 20 questions that I got a couple of weeks ago.
We did that on purpose.
Because you listen to CrossPolitic anyway, you shouldn't even be listening to it. I don't even know what you're doing.
That got ducked for some reason. So if you got a chance to have Matt Walsh on again, what would you do? What would you say to him?
My first question is, what does he make of Jesus Christ?
Okay.
Just start at the beginning.
I would just start at the beginning. Who is Jesus? What do you make of him?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's probably where I want to start at. If that was it
simplifies a lot.
I would want to define the conversation we want to be in, because remember, I think Matt was supposed to come out here at one time.
We've invited him out, and we want to have that conversation with him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But we haven't had an opportunity. But I think that's a great answer, Chuck. I would say, so who is Jesus? And explain to us what your understanding of his work is.
Yeah.
And then you start there, and then I think from there I would want to start chasing him into some of these the typical Roman Catholic corners.
Shore this up. How do you hold these two things together?
Yeah, how do you hold this together?
Especially the anthropology, because that was what was behind so much of his answers. It didn't come out, but that's what was behind so much of his answers. Is he's assuming that natural law arguments apart from a transformed heart can change hearts, and that's where the real issue lies.
And he's denying the Great Commission.
He thinks there's a neutral ground that everyone can agree
exactly
have a conversation. Yeah. No, that's true, and we would. If we get him here in the studio one of these days, and have an hour with him, we'll get him in the corner. We'll corner him.
We'll make you proud that time. How about
that? Well, it just, especially with what we've got coming, I certainly have emphasized on my program a number of times the necessity to really think through what we're going to be facing. It used to be a few years down the road. I don't know that it's a few years down the road. I really honestly wonder about our ability to do what you do, to do what we do with the Dividing Line, what you do with your program, in as little as 2021 to 2025. I really do question whether we're going to have the freedom to do this type of thing in the future, at least in this culture. And
I'll just add that, of course, I mean, the ultimate concern of everything that we're trying to do is about the gospel, CrossPolitic. And even with our interview with Mark Charles that we did last week, I mean, we're going there with Mark, but one of the first things we're actually trying to do is expose the failure of their own worldview to be able to get there.
Right.
That's kind of what we were trying to do with Matt Walsh, that we tried to do with Mark Charles last week. The other thing just in the back of my mind too is I think one of the weaknesses, I wholeheartedly agree, the gospel is the power of salvation.
to all who believe. That's got to be that's the spear point. That's the power. And I think that Chuck was exactly right, that Matt was somewhat ashamed of that, and at least when we were talking to him. The one thing I also didn't want to leave behind, though, is I think Christians also need to recognize that the science and the history are on our side.
That's right.
And so even though I agree with you that natural law and natural revelation are not sufficient to save, they are our weapons.
They're
still.
not neutral in the conversation.
They're not neutral in the conversation. And so I didn't want Matt also to get the impression that we were assuming that none of his arguments are worth anything.
Right.
I want to equip Christians to recognize that science is on our side, history is on our side, natural revelation agrees with Jesus because he's the Lord over it.
Right. Except obviously he has the idea that those arguments can have a power in the heart of a natural person.
Right. And that's where he's wrong.
Yeah, he thinks they're sufficient in and of themselves.
And he's wrong there, but I just want to hold that together.
But Doc, again, I keep going back to this, and I'll say this again. I know that Matt Walsh is the issue in the conversation, but to me, and you know this from being one of the guys who offers a social justice statement.
Right.
It's guys who are the closest to us that scare me. Watching what happened on the panel with John MacArthur and Phil Johnson, and watching that whole thing, that scared me more than the situation that happens with Matt Walsh, because these are guys that I think handed me ammo, the guys that I think that we're fighting with when it comes to this cultural Marxism and social justice.
They're supposed to be part of our starting five.
And yet they're the first guys I think that would drop us in the same time.
That's true.
And so while I do see Matt as an issue, we have an in-house fight that's way more because what's being compromised here is the gospel in the same way that Matt would be compromising it too, right? And you've talked about this on the show because I've listened. And so I have a little more concern about where we're at in camp, in the reform world.
The Gospel Coalition.
Right.
Oh,
I couldn't jump in a foxhole with them.
More worried there. Even though on paper we actually agree on paper more with the Gospel Coalition and PCA.
I feel like I could trust Matt Walsh in some instances,
but I don't trust them when what we're up against.
I ain't trusting nobody right now.
Well, there's no question that when we're not on the air, I can give you some more background information about what you were talking about.
That's the show, guys.
There are just certain things you don't talk about in public, shall we say, right now.
We didn't talk about everything. We didn't get that memo. Yeah. Nobody told us that.
Yeah. But no, I hear you, and I believe me, every day I'm being attacked by folks and it's far more difficult for me to have to deal with attacks from people who I have to accept their Christian profession than it is the Muslims or atheists in the world. I don't like putting Muslims and atheists together in that way, but you get the idea. Non-Christians, because you have to accept their profession of faith and deal with them as a brother at that point, whether they are or not. That's not up to us to judge. So I was going to ask one last thing, and then it sort of actually crosses over. But you said something about co-belligerents and allies and seeing Roman Catholics in a certain way. Would you see a conservative believing Muslim in the same way as a Roman Catholic?
No.
Tap, 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 tap. We still have the connection there, Rich?
Can you hear us?
I can hear you. It just got quiet.
No, Toby said no.
I said no.
Okay.
We would not see Roman Catholics and Muslims in the same way.
Okay. What about in dealing with transgenderism?
Are you asking if we would agree politically in one sense to move forward with them on the issue? Or are you asking if we...
In the sense of co-belligerence, is there any way to look at a Muslim who likewise believes that there is a creator, that God created male and female, that transgenderism is a violation of the creator's will, they don't want their children exposed to this? In England, for example, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but in the United Kingdom, it has been, in a certain area anyways, Muslim parents that have taken the lead in objecting to transgender education in the public schools. Right. So in that situation, could there be co-belligerence?
Yes.
Okay, so now I'm hearing a yes instead of
yes.
Okay.
In the same way, I could be a co-belligerent with an atheist fighting the pro-life issue, a pro-life atheist.
Yeah.
But I also know
I don't know
where
how
I'm
they
gonna,
get there.
I also know where I'm going to maybe distrust them or not, or hedge my protect myself in that co-belligerent.
When you first asked the question about Roman Catholic and Muslim, I thought you just meant, do I view them theologically?
Right.
Roughly?
No.
And that's no. But in terms of co-belligerence, with regard to pro-life or just anti-statism or anti-trans mutilation, absolutely.
I think the difference too is that we know how long we can be co-belligerent since we have a historical track record that shows that Muslims are just waiting to cut our heads off and Catholics are just waiting to expel us and burn us. But they have a different trajectory in time, Yeah.
You are just so easy to keep, so many people going the same direction with you, Chocolate, that it's great.
I just know where this cliff is. I know where the fall off is what I'm saying. We have different fall off.
I just happen to know some Muslims that would go. I'm not interested in cutting your head off, and I never would be. So that's just why I mentioned that in passing.
So they're not Muslims then?
Oh, they would argue with you about that too.
But you argue.
You know where that went. That got precept real quick.